Okay, so this is the exciting problem. A lot of people in the community are testing this particular one. There's a lot of buzz around this particular concept of strawberry, how this model cannot count the number of R's in the word strawberry. And there was a lot of different screenshots shared on X about this particular question and that ChatGPT was getting this right. So let's test. All right, so here we have, there are three R's letters in the word strawberry. So it looks like this is the first time I'm seeing that any ChatGPT model get this right. It was very consistently getting this wrong. So it's good to see this. I'm going to just sample one more time just to double check. Yeah, you can see now it's very consistent. So this one apparently has been solved, and it'll be interesting again to test these counting type of questions and tasks, because what I'm noticing with these models, they actually struggle with counting. So we have two different models that were recently released by OpenAI. So we have the GPT-4o 2024-0806. So this is the 6th of August, that's last week. And then we have this other model as well called ChatGPT-4o latest. The ChatGPT-4o latest is the model that's connected in ChatGPT, the product. So that's the one that you will be using, which is referred to as ChatGPT-4o. That's the Omni model. But you also have this Omni model as well, which has this particular checkpoint on that particular date. And both of them are now made available via the API, so we can take it for a spin. So what I'm going to do in this video is going to go through a few test cases that I've developed for testing different aspects of these models. So in terms of capabilities, whether they can reason about certain test cases or problems, and also taking a look at the output quality as well, because these two models are claimed to significantly improve the quality of the outputs and how good they are at reasoning at specific tasks. The LLM says updated the chatbot arena, and what's remarkable with this particular model, the ChatGPT-4o 2024-0808, which is just the ChatGPT-4o latest, as I mentioned here. You will see tag here. So the date stuff was a little bit confusing, but that was clarified already. And this is a model that probably a lot of people have been testing under anonymous chatbot. So it received over 11,000 community votes, and this apparently now successfully reclaimed the #1 position, surpassing Google Gemini 1.5 Pro experimental. We did a video on this. I will link it down in the description box. So we're going to test some of these same test cases on this particular model and see how it compares, and to give you an idea on what model is good at what, and kind of make some comparison just based on my own experience. Overall, what they have achieved here is even better than the Gemini experimental model. They overall got #1 rank, and in math they are 1 to 2, and all the other categories they rank #1 as well, like hard prompts, coding. In this case, it's probably the best coding model, but still we need to test how good it is compared to other models like Cloud 3.5 Sonnet, which is a really impressive model at creative and code generation tasks, and instruction following as well, longer query and multi-turn. We're going to be testing on both this particular model and this particular one as well. So this one is the latest snapshot that supports the structured outputs feature that they recently announced. And we also did a video on that. And you can see that this one has a context window of 128,000 tokens and roughly 16K tokens. And it has a training cutoff up to October 2023. Similarly here, same thing with this model. But this model, they refer to it as a dynamic model, continuously updated to the current version of GPT-4o in ChatGPT. So this is what you will get when you use ChatGPT, I believe. And it says here it's intended for research and evaluation. So something they recommend, and I saw this from some of their employees, is that use this model to test, and evaluate things, evaluate on your own benchmark. But they are recommending that you use this particular one instead of this when you're leveraging the models via the APIs. We're going to jump into the test cases now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the playground. So this is the playground here. It has changed a bit, but I really like how good this is because it has also a way to compare the models. So instead of testing by each individual model, I'm going to test and I'm going to compare both of the model outputs here. So just to test like latency, check the output quality, and I have a good way to compare the outputs that it's generating. Okay, so I've designed a few tests. So I'm going to go from like very basic tests all the way to more complex tests. And the one that I first designed here is this one here, which is please describe what is the best sushi today. So I like this test because the first thing I want to check, what is the type of responses these models would output? And this is a very basic test, as I mentioned, so I'm just going to run it. You can also see how fast this model is compared to this particular one, but this one is, again, quite verbose. Again, it's doing 740 tokens compared to the 424 tokens from this particular model. If you want to check the maximum number of tokens, right now it's 4K, but I'm actually going to increase this all the way to 16K as the default. Something I'm looking at in terms of the output quality here is that I'm looking to see whether it detects that this is something subjective, because that's usually what I get from these models, especially these human preference aligned models. It says here, yeah, it can be subjective. So here it says truly depends on personal preferences, current trends, and the quality of ingredients. Very interesting that for this particular response, it doesn't really even mention the word subjective. It actually responds in a nicer tone. I like this. But this one straight up, it tells you it's subjective. So there's a little bit of a difference in the type of response. This is a more common response that I see with these models today. So I was expecting the same phrase here on this one, but this one gave me a better phrase. So I would prefer this one. The rest of the output, it's not too important. It's just how it starts this particular response. It's what matters for this particular test. So this is the second test, and this one is about code generation. So I wanted to create a detailed Python function that multiplies two numbers and then subtracts 10 from it. That's very basic task, and most of the models can get it, but I'm looking at specific things in the way the model generates that particular function. So that's what I'm checking here. And also, what's the formatting that it's choosing. Overall, I care about quality, but I also care about the exact way it's generating that code. Again, we see that this one is a bit faster than ChatGPT-4o latest, and the number of tokens roughly the same, but let's look at the actual output. So let's start with the GPT-4o 2024 here. Okay, we see this function. It says define, multiply, and subtract num1, num2. All right, and then it has some comment here. It has a parameter. This code looks good. And then it has, okay, so this is what it returns. And then it has multiply two numbers. Okay, that looks good. And I like that it has the comments. So that's what I'm looking at, right? Those are little things that I'm looking at. That comments is really what I want to see in code, even though this is a basic function. And I'm wondering how it would perform if I ask it to, let's say, specify a class or something like that. That would be an interesting next test. So it has an example usage. I see this is very common with these models. And then it gives me an explanation as well and how to use it. Okay, I'm happy with this. I think this looks good. Right, it even has the example here. Now let's look at what ChatGPT-4o latest gave me. Again, different choice. You can see here is num1, num2, and this one says AB. I would prefer num1, num2 to be honest. So AB, maybe not so much. So I'm thinking this one looks already better than this. But let's see. So it has okay, parameters, returns. Okay, that looks good. And then it has example. Then it has step 1, step 2. Yeah, so something went on here. I don't really like what I'm seeing with this particular output. So that doesn't look so good. That's strange. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to resample it again. Yeah, so something that I noticed with some of the experiments that I was running is that this particular model tends to go into this step-by-step stuff, and that's influencing the ability or the type of output this model is producing. So it says here below is a step-by-step explanation along with a Python function that performs the operation of multiplying two numbers. I did not ask that. I am actually asking create a detailed Python function. So there's a bit of a confusion into how this model is addressing this problem. But you can see here that it explained and then it gave me a code, and it looks like it has this step 2, step 3. This is a weird type of output or comment for a function like this. I just wanted to highlight, this is why I wanted to compare both of them, but I prefer this one. Okay, so what I have here, this is a very difficult test. So for this one, the trick here is that the model needs to know how to sum numbers. It needs to know what to sum, which is the 70 prime numbers, the first 70 prime numbers. It needs to extract the last 4 digits. This might seem to be a very simple task, but actually most models struggle with this one. And the reason is because it does involve a bit of reasoning, and it does involve a bit of like math understanding and logic. So the way the models would perform this correctly will be to use some external tool or some code interpreter to be able to execute code and return back some feedback to the model that the model can use to eventually give you the right response. Okay, seems this one went a bit faster this time compared to this one. So that's a little bit interesting. Again, because I do have both of these in the playground here. Maybe one is influencing the other. I'm not so sure about that. I don't know how these models are served, but I'm assuming that they have their own latency and one is not affecting the other just because I have them side by side here. But anyways, this one was faster as you noticed. So it's saying the first 70 prime numbers. Okay, that looks okay. And then it does a sum, and overall it's not getting the right response. This is the wrong answer, and I'm going to look at the response from the other model here. Okay, 70 prime numbers, then it does a summation of those, and so it usually fails in the summation part. And again, I see that really went off the rails here, and this is the wrong response. This is not correct. Both of them failed. I have only seen Cloud 3.5 Sonnet and Gemini 1.5 Pro experimental get this one right. So I think these other two models that I'm talking about, they have really good reasoning capabilities. That's something to keep in mind. But I need to do more testing here. This is one simple test. You can try different variations of this just to see how good these models are at this specific problem, but we need to try different variants. Anyways, both of these models fail at this one. Okay, so the one I have here, this is a very popular one that's used in the community. So basically, Kaylee has 3 brothers. Each of her brothers has 2 sisters. How many sisters does Kaylee have? And this basically throws off the model. Doesn't really know how to come up with the right answer. So I'm very curious to see how both of these models perform on this one. So it says Kaylee has 3 brothers. Each of her brothers has 2 sisters. Since Kaylee is one of the sisters, the other sister must be one additional sister besides Kaylee. So therefore, Kaylee has 1 sister. That is correct. And let's see the other one here. Kaylee has 3 brothers and each brother has 2 sisters. Since Kaylee is one of those sisters, it means each brother has only 1 additional sister aside from Kaylee. Therefore, Kaylee has 1 sister. Both explanations are correct. They're very different, but in the end, the answer is correct. Most of the other models that I've tested this on usually fail for this problem. Okay, so this is the exciting problem. A lot of people in the community are testing this particular one. There's a lot of buzz around this particular concept of strawberry, how this model cannot count the number of R's in the word strawberry. And there was a lot of different screenshots shared on X about this particular question and that ChatGPT was getting this right. So let's test. All right, so here we have, there are 3 R's letters in the word strawberry. So it looks like this is the first time I'm seeing that any ChatGPT model get this right. It was very consistently getting this wrong. So it's good to see this. I'm going to just sample one more time just to double check. Yeah, you can see now it's very consistent. So this one apparently has been solved, and it'll be interesting again to test these counting type of questions and tasks, because what I'm noticing with these models, they actually struggle with counting. I was looking deeper at the reason why these models were struggling with this particular type of questions, and it actually had to do with tokenization, the way it's tokenizing and understanding this particular word. It actually tokenizes this into like 3 different tokens. And so in the context of this question, it may have, or it may be firing off some features and it's confusing the question. So one fun experiment that I've been testing recently, this is a very new experiment, is code generation, but creative type of code generation. I know these models can generate code, but what I'm interested in is to see if the model can generate code that, let's say, creates creative games or something very unique. A unique experience is what I'm looking for. So this is the type of problems and questions that I'm going to be designing in the future to test upcoming models. I think this is an excellent way of testing not only the coding capabilities, but how creative and unique the outputs are. I want something very novel. It's what I'm looking for in the outputs for this particular test. So this one is about generating a creative Python game that helps me with learning about LLMs. I need to improve my technical expertise and memorize key concepts. So the emphasis should be creative. And I think if the model has good instruction following capabilities, it has good code generation capabilities, I'm expecting that it gives me something novel. I'm looking for something novel explicitly. Okay, so I have both of these models running. You can see again that one model is going super fast compared to the other one. It feels a bit random in the playground. It might be different in the APIs, just keep that in mind. But it looks like this one ran faster than this one this time. Anyways, so I'm going to look at the code itself. And this time, this model looks like it gave me some code, right? Even though like the last time it gave me some step-by-step, I'm going to just copy the code here and just test this right away. And I have a Google Colab open here. So I'm just going to paste my code here. It looks like everything is correct. I'm going to run this. And it says here, question one, which model is known for being one of the largest LLMs as of 2023? I don't like this already. I think this is just the multiple choice. This is the standard output that I'm getting from all of these models. In my opinion, like these models should be able to perform this task really well already. Like they should understand the intent and give me something surprising or creative. That's the bar that I'm setting for these models now. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to test the output of the other model before I proceed with a follow-up to the model. I'm going to test this one. So I didn't like that one because it's not creative. I know that type of game and I don't think that's interesting for me. So I'm going to test the other one. Okay, so I pasted the code here and I'm going to run this. All right, so it says, welcome to the LLM quiz game. And again, it gives me this multiple choice and I can select. I don't really like this output from what I can tell. The game is pretty simple and it's not really that creative. So something that I can do is I can give it a follow-up. And this is what generally works with the other models like Gemini 1.5 Pro experimental. So I'm just going to give it some feedback. And hopefully with the feedback, it can revise the code and can generate a better game that's more creative. All right, so I'm going to take this one first, and then I'm just going to test it. Okay, I'm going to bring it to Google Colab. I'm going to paste it here. So definitely longer code I can see. I'm going to run this. Okay, welcome to the LLM adventure game. Your goal is to navigate through the research lab and solve all the puzzles to escape. Currently at the Library of Models. In this library, you find books on how LLMs like GPT-3 are named. What does GPT stand for? All right, I'm just going to follow along here. I think it's intriguing. All right, it says correct. Would you like to move to another location? Great, yes. All right, the data dungeons. In the data dungeons, you ponder what step is crucial for LLMs to work with text efficiently. All right, it looks like. Oh, I gave it some wrong output. Anyways, so I think this is better. I needed to select one of these options, but it could have been improved by having some statements to check the correct type, that I input the correct type. Anyways, I think this is much better and I like the intriguing aspect of this. And I'm now going to try the output of the ChatGPT-4o latest model, the escape room. I'm intrigued by this one already, but let me see. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna run this. It says, welcome to the LLM escape room. Can you solve all the puzzles and escape? Be mindful that asking for hints will cost you a point. You have entered the tokenization chamber. So puzzle. The text hypertransformers must be split into subwords. How would the following be tokenized? Okay, so it's testing me on tokenization. All right, so I'm gonna choose, let's see. I'm just gonna go with A. So it says incorrect. The correct answer is C. Tokenization breaks the text down into smaller units. Hyper and transformers are simplified subwords. Okay, I guess hyper transformers. I guess that works. And then it says you have entered the inference vault. Puzzle. You have trained an LLM. Now it needs to make predictions. Which of the following describes what inference means in the context of LLMs? Training the model and additional data? Nope. We have B here. Nope. Then we have C. Predictions with the pre-trained model and adjusting. So I'm going to go with C. Correct. Inference is when the model generates predictions. You have entered the transformer house. So you can see that it tries to add a bit of like gaming into it, right? This should be a game. It should be educational. I like this one. I actually like the other one better. It was more creative, I think. And so I will give the vote to the other model. But I still prefer the Cloud 3.5 Sonnet outputs and the Gemini 1.5 Pro output on this particular task. So the next task that we have here, this is a math puzzle. And this one, none of the models get this right. The only time I got a model to get this right was when I was using the Llama 405B parameter model, but I thought it was really random. So 50% of the times it gives me the wrong answer and 50% of the times it gave me the correct answer. So it's still 50-50. But most of the other models always gives you the wrong answer 100% of the time. So I'm not expecting that both of these models get this right, but if there is an improvement on not only reasoning and the ability to understand the question better and can process all of this information in the right format, because this is the issue, right? The ASCII characters are throwing off the model. If it can do that, then I think that's already an improvement in capability. Okay, so this one finished already. Says the candle that has been blown out first by Peter is the one with the shortest remaining length, as it would have burned the longest before being blown out. Based on the given lengths, candle 4. That's incorrect. Says the assistant, says here the length of the candle suggests how long they were burning before they were blown out. The shorter the candle, the longer it was burning based on the length provided. It says here, oh, it measures the units. So this is 4 units. This is 7 units. This is 8 units. Okay, that looks correct. 1 unit and 2 units. The fourth candle is the shortest, it says, indicating it burned the longest before being blown out. Therefore, candle 4 was the first one that Peter blew out. The candle that was blown first is the longest here, which is 3. So the response should be 3, but they're responding with 4. So you can see it even has the units here, but somehow it confuses itself and it's predicting that it's the fourth candle because it burned the longest before being blown out. Yeah, it's a bit confusing. Anyway, so doesn't understand the task. Both of them fail on this one. And this is a test that I'll be constantly checking because this is unsolved by these models. One of the other very popular tests that I'm seeing today is this question of comparison between two numbers. And basically, we're asking the model which is bigger. Now, if you look at it, it may seem like a super simple task, but this is the thing with these models, right? And this is the reason why we have to work better on understanding how these models actually interpret these type of tasks and how it generates the answer, how it processes information, and how it's interpreting everything that we're passing it. And apparently with this particular question, all of the models really fail at this one. So I'm very curious how it performs on this one, both of these models. All right, so this one looks like it got it correct. This is nice to see. So the 2024-0806 answer first and then explain is just explain it to me. It went into an explanation mode, and that actually helps the model to get this right. Usually these models fail when they try to give the answer first and then explain. Most of the models do that with this type of question, so most of them fail. And you can see here as well with this one, it actually chooses to go into some explanation. So let's look at the conclusion. So it says 9.9 is bigger than 9.11. Both of them get it right. I think this is a much more capable model. I was testing the earlier versions of GPT-4o and GPT-4o mini, and both of them fail at this one. And so it's really cool to see that this particular model is solving this. It solves the strawberry problem as well. And I think that's because these models have been tuned a lot more and are improving fast, right? Then I think the next iteration of this is going to be even more capable. While it does solve some of these problems, you can see it still has some issues with some of the tasks that I showed you. Something that I want to test here is the default format that the model chooses for questions like this. These are math word problem solving questions. And so what I want to see is the type of format. What I've seen from all the examples that I've seen on with people sharing online about ChatGPT-4o outputs is that the model automatically goes into let's think step by step and so on. So that's what I'm expecting, but let's see. Let's just run it on both models. Exactly as I've seen with the snapshots. So this is not a hard problem. I just wanted to see the format. And I'm looking at the format here. Let's break it down step by step. It's good that it does this natively. And again here, let's break down the transactions and it goes into step by step. So what would be great to test, make this more complex and to test if it consistently goes into this type of break it down step by step mode. That will be, I think, an interesting test as well. I will design some more complex tasks related to this type of problems and I'll be testing future models on that. All right, so this particular task here is asking the model to generate 8,000 word poem. The challenging part with this task is that there are very few poems that have more than 8,000 words. And it's actually quite unrealistic, but I still want to see how the model addresses this task because I'm checking for a couple of things. So the first thing I want to know is if it can generate the 8,000 word poem and it doesn't go into like repetitive mode, that this is what happens when these models are forced to output very long form of content. So that's the first thing. And I really want to see the consistency of it, like the structure of the poem and actually what it outputs. If it outputs a poem or tries to explain something to me, I just want to see how it performs on these aspects that I care about for this particular problem. So both models are just outputting the poem. Okay, this one already stopped. You can see here it's 868 tokens. That doesn't look like 8,000 word poem. And again, this one as well, this is roughly 1,700 tokens. No, this is not great. And so let's look at the outputs. So it has the entire poem. I don't really care what the poem says or what the type of poem is. Like I said, I'm looking at the length of it, and I'm looking at what it explains and how it explains the output. Says it's a massive undertaking and likely more than can be reasonably provided in one response here. So, however, can certainly start a lengthy epic style poem for you, and you can continue to build upon it if you wish. Now, I don't like that. I mean, I think these models should try to produce exactly what I wanted to produce. And in a way, it's kind of refusing to do that because it probably has no knowledge of how to do that. And so this is the type of response that you get. And the same thing with this other model. Says it's quite a challenging task due to constraints of the length of responses. But no, it has 16K tokens. So it doesn't have awareness of that, but still I expected it to be smart enough to provide me that and force itself to provide me that because that is what I want. So this is not a really good experience. And here it says, feel free to let me know if you like more sections or to explore specific themes, characters. I don't like that output. That's a really bad output. So in this one, let me see. This one says the style will certainly carry for 8,000 words with continual crafting and expansion of themes and relations. And so it says, feel free to continue developing each section or pursue entirely new stanzas along various lines. Again, I really don't like that type of output. I mean, I know what it's saying. It's saying for me to just keep asking it. But imagine if this is just a task where I wanted it to just produce it or produce a longer document and it just breaks. And that's not a good experience. So anyways, I think this can be improved. And I'll be doing some other tests on this particular type of task where I wanted to produce a longer form of content, because what I'm noticing, and the research says this, that these models really struggle to create long form content. And that's natural because I think the type of information that's used to align and tune these models, like in the supervised fine tuning part, it doesn't involve a lot of responses that are very long form. So the data is very scarce for that type of output. But anyways, this is something I'll be testing because I think it's an important problem that these models get right. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for listening. This was a longer video than usual. And let me know if you have some type of test that you would like me to test these models on, or leave your comments on any of the experiments that I run. And if you have ideas for the type of tasks that you want me to run on future models, please consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you all on the next one.